2 months ago, the Fukuoka Champions League was held in Japan, bringing in 5,000 players to one of the biggest Pokemon tournaments of all time. And with Fukuoka being our first look into the post-rotation metagame, the decks that did well then are sure to be strong best deck in format contenders going into our first regional tournament in post-rotation in Atlanta. And the deck that took it all home, and that is quickly cementing itself as one of the best decks in the meta right now, arguably the best comeback deck we have in the game right now, is Feraligatr. In the online space, Feraligatr has been taking down tournaments with over 100 players already, and in this video, I played it to an online tournament with over 200 people, with the goal of finishing in the top 8 players. But of course, before we can get into the tournament, let's break down how the deck works and the exact 60 cards I'm playing. Starting us off, we have a 3-3-3 line of our main attacker, Feraligatr. Now, it's important to note that this deck is not going to run any ways to get stage 2s into play quickly, such as Rare Candy or Grand Tree. So we have to play a thick line of Crocodiles to be able to get into Feraligatr through using Technical Machine Evolution and manually evolving our Pokemon. Now, the reason we choose not to play any Rare Candies in the deck is because every stage of the evolution line has a strong attack that can be used to alter your game plan into different archetypes. Totodile has the Big Bite attack, dealing 10 damage and stopping your opponent retreating. This lets you steal gains from your opponent if it looks like you're going to lose on the prize race. Croconaw has the Reverse Thrust attack, which hits for 30 and lets you pivot into a bench Pokemon. This synergizes really well with Milotic EX, which we run as a 2-2 line, and Mimikyu, which we run as a 1-off. Croconaw can be really strong against decks that struggle to break through wall Pokemon and don't run many boss, or have already used up some bosses, letting you play a more defensive wall game plan. And finally, the main guy, Feraligatr, has the Giant Wave attack for 2 water energy. This is your big aggressive option, dealing 160 damage and having the added effect of not letting you use it on your next turn on that Feraligatr. But 160 damage isn't that strong, is it? How can you play aggressively while only swinging for 160 every other turn? Well, Feraligatr's ability is where the damage can really get out of hand. Torrential Heart drops 50 damage on your Feraligatr and says that during that turn its attacks deal an extra 120 damage. This is massive, letting you take your Giant Wave attack from 160 damage up to 280, letting you knock out almost anything your opponent can put in front of you. To take the damage even higher, the deck runs 3 copies of Munkidori to move that 50 damage from your Feraligatr onto your opponent's Pokemon. To round out the Pokemon, we've got a singular Relicanth to let you use every tool in your arsenal while keeping your Gator at a tanky 180 HP. We've also got a plethora of consistency supporters in there. 4 Arvens really helps you set up, and Iono and Research lets you cycle through the deck really quickly. 2 Lana's Aid lets you recover your single prize Pokemon and basic energy from the discard, and Crispin lets you accelerate energy a bit faster, as sometimes accelerating energy can be a bit slow if you're just relying on manual attachments. We've got 3 counter captures in there and no boss's orders. Feraligatr is generally planning to play from behind, so being able to boss on an item is a really strong effect. And even if you're ahead on prizes, quite a lot of the time you don't even want to boss, because you can have Munkidori to damage the bench. Now for the A-spec, we're going to play Precious Trolley. Since we want to go second and run 4 Arvens, being able to consistently take advantage of the turn 1 Precious Trolley plus TM Evolution combo to get 2 Croconauts going turn 1 is incredibly powerful. And because we want to be able to consistently use this combo, we're also going to be running 2 TM Evos. To bulk up our Feraligatrs and get them up to 280 health, we've got 2 Luxurious Capes, and then 1 Rescue Board to pivot and make the Reverse Thrust play into Mimikyu a lot stronger, as you can Reverse Thrust, push up Mimikyu with a Rescue Board, then next turn switch for free back into Feraligatr. To round out the list, we also run 2 Artisans, for the situations where we prize trolley or just generally need to search out Pokemon. Then 4 Water Energy, 3 Dark Energy and 2 Luminous Energy. So for the tournament, I'm aiming to finish in the top 8. The way it's structured, we're going to be playing 8 rounds of Swiss and no top cut. So to finish in the top 8 out of over 200 people, I should have to win at least 6 games, tie 1 game, and then I can afford to lose 1. So with that said, I loaded into game 1 of the tournament, and in round 1, I was paired against Lily Sims on Terrapagos. Lily is a really strong player who's made multiple regional top 64s and a regional top 32. So this first round is going to be a challenge. Lily took a very long time to set up thanks to itchy pollen and bad draws denying her of her Terrapagos, whilst I was able to set up a Milotic EX and a Feraligatr to start shifting damage to target down Lily's Hoots. Lily decides to charge up Bouffalant to break out of Itchy Pollen, at which point I was able to reverse thrust to kill the Bouffalant and pivot it to a Milotic, which Lily couldn't kill in one hit. After punching Milotic with Fan Rotom, I was able to use Flail thanks to Relicanth to kill Fan Rotom, putting me at 3 prizes whilst Lily's still at 5. Lily charges up a Blood Moon Ursaluna and uses Prime Catcher to take 1 prize off of Feraligatr, but by this point the game is pretty much over. I top decked a Pokegear, giving me Crispin to get the second energy on my second Gator, and use Giant Wave for the knockout, whilst putting Lily in a board state where no matter what she does, I can take my last prize card on the next turn with Munkidori TWM, giving me the win in round 1. Going into round 2, we're paired against a pretty shaky matchup, Poison Arcaludon, and to make matters worse, I took a very difficult start to the game, giving up multiple free prizes before drawing into the Arven just in time. From there, I top decked another Arven to grab a Pokegear, gambling on the slim chance I have to come back into this game. After giving up a third prize, I top decked probably the only card that can save this game, Counter Catcher. See, now I'm able to gust down the Brute Bonnet and use Big Bite to buy some time. Plus, if my top decks continue to be good after my opponent commits their only copy of Churro, I can go back into Retreat Lock to try steal the game that way. And after setting up the Retreat Lock, my opponent gives me a near perfect Iono, with 2 counter catches in the hand. All I need now is to draw into an energy, so once the Churro comes down, I can carry on locking with a new Totodile, and we might just be able to steal this game. And of course, the top decks continue to be goated here, letting me set up the Retreat Lock once more, where my opponent eventually decks out and somehow lets me steal game 2, moving on to 2-0. Now, round 3 was against a Goldengo with the Dunsparce engine, and unfortunately the recording corrupted, so I'm not going to have any visuals for this one. But essentially, I played a fairly messy early game, but still managed to pull out an early lead, going down to 2 prizes to 4 fairly early on. But my opponent made the correct play in identifying that my board was fairly weak and pulled out an Iono to 2, before KOing my powered Crocodile. After that, I was unable to respond with a return knockout, and he still had a Churro and a Switch left, ruling out Retreat Lock, so he was able to sweep me in the late game and pull back that round, putting me down to 2-1. Going into round 4 at 2-1, I paired another Goldengo, again with the Dunsparce engine. And aside from the first turn being draw, attach, pass, I got off to a pretty solid start, getting the turn 2 Precious Trolley TM Evo, and then a turn 3 TM Evo to get out 2 Feraligatrs, as my opponent took a reasonably slow start, only pulling off their TM Evo by the second turn, before finally taking the first prize by turn 3. After I responded by taking out his first Goldengo, I don't feel too great about my board state. If my opponent can find the knockout off my Iono to 5, I don't have any follow-up play next turn, and to do that, they can just Arven for a superior energy retrieval to get back 4 energy from the discard. But he doesn't. He gets Earthen Vessel instead. Strange, but surely he has it in hand. And then, this happened. Turns out he misplayed and grabbed the Vessel by accident, meaning he didn't have enough to knock out the active Feraligatr. From this position, my opponent reasoned that he would be too far behind to come back and just decided to wrap it up. So after bouncing back from the first loss of the tournament by winning against the exact same matchup in the next round, we're moving on to 3-1. The next round was against a Raging Bulk, and this was going to be the fastest game of the tournament for me, because my opponent bricked. They flipped over a Fan Rotom, attached, used Fan Call for just a Hoot and 2 Noctowls, and passed. And while my opponent was struggling, on the other side of the board, I was ripping the turn 1 Arven for Trolley and Evo play, to get 2 Croconaws out. For whatever reason, my opponent evolves into the Hoot, attaches to the Noctowl, and passes their turn over, just for me to attack with Munkidori, which was definitely a misplay. I could have taken a knockout here with Reverse Thrust, but oh well. My opponent still can't do anything and just uses Noctowl Speedwing. And in this position, I can just win the game. Crispin gives me an energy for my Gator, Torrential Heart and Adrenabrain lets me knock out the bench Rotom, and Reverse Thrust lets me knock out the Noctowl to move on to a 4-1 record. But going into round 6, things would start to fall apart. I was paired against Hop's deck, which revolves around using Hop's Zacian and Cramorant as attackers in combination with damage modifiers such as Hop's Snorlax and Postwick to boost the damage dealt by both of the main attackers. And my opponent gets a decent turn 1, using Hop's bag to get out a Zacian and a Snorlax. I unfortunately have to rip one of my Ionos to get a decent setup, but I managed to draw into a Poffin and use Artisan to get my board filled up. Unfazed by my itchy pollen though, my opponent uses Insta Strike to knock out Budew and put 30 on a Totodile. Now I make a bit of a stupid play and just leave my damaged Croconaw inactive while using TM Evolution to get out a second Croconaw, but my opponent can just use Insta Strike to kill my Croconaw, meaning I won't be able to respond with a knockout on Zacian next turn, especially with my weak hand. And whilst I try to use Big Bite on a Cramorant to stall some time, it doesn't work for long, as my opponent gusts down a Munkidori where I can't retreat it because of my terrible hand, letting my opponent retreat back into Zacian and carry on swinging. I use Ultra Ball to clear out my hand and find a Feraligatr, letting me swing for 150 into the Zacian, but with a 0 card hand and only one Feraligatr down that only has 230 health, this position's looking quite dire. And with my opponent leading 2 prizes to 6, this game is pretty much over, as despite me trying to stall my opponent by retreat locking their Cramorant, they eventually find the switch to knock out my Feraligatr and put me down to a 4-2 record. So taking 2 losses means I won't be able to finish in the top 8 anymore, which was my original goal. But if I win both of my last 2 games, I should still be able to make top 16 with pretty high resistance. And my next round pairing would give me hope that I can still make a good finish in this tournament, as I was paired against a Ceruledge. This matchup was going to be the perfect showcase of the Walling game plan, as my opponent was playing a list that didn't run any wall breakers. To make things even worse, their only attacker, Ceruledge EX, was weak to water, so all I needed to do was get out both of my Milotics and this game would pretty much be over. And in my starting hand, I had access to an Arven for the Trolley Evo combo to get out both of those Milotics. From here, this is pretty much an auto win. My opponent tried to get a Feraligatr ready to attack with Cruel Arrow, but I was able to gust it down and shut down their hopes of winning the game, putting me on to a 5-2 record with 1 round left in the tournament. And for the final round, I was against a third Gholdengo, this time without Dunsparce. This was a matchup which I had already lost to once before, so I wasn't looking forward to this final game. I got a mediocre start with just 2 Totodiles in play, but my opponent had an even worse opening, only being able to get 1 Gimmighoul on their bench, whilst I was able to pull off a TM Evo on my second turn to establish a much stronger board. My opponent again struggles to make any progress on their next turn, just attaching to the Munkidori and punching my Mimikyu for 60, but I was able to take the first knockout of the game on their Munkidori to set myself up for a pretty easy game. My opponent gets down Feraligatr to finally set up a large bench, but flips tails on coin toss, meaning they're going to be falling behind by a second prize. And after a second flip the script, surely they're going to be able to find a Gholdengo, right? No. They give up a third prize, meaning their chances of winning are slowly fading away. And then finally, after 3 flip the scripts, they eventually take their first prize. But I respond immediately with a knockout on the Gholdengo, meaning my opponent needs to take 5 prizes before I can take just 1. And they just can't do it, letting me round out the tournament with a final record of 6 wins and 2 losses, meaning I finish in 10th out of 206 people. Alright, thanks for sticking around till the end. My opponents were really nice during this tournament and gave me some really challenging games. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.